Welcome, everyone. I'm Sam Sebastian, and you're listening to How Are You Doing Really? In today's episode, I have the honor of speaking with my friend Diane Taylor. Diane shares her story around her mother recently passing away and the process that she went through in going and living with her and taking care of her in her final weeks on this earth. It's a pretty heartfelt and intimate conversation of her internal and external process around her mother and how healing it was to have had the opportunity to be with her up until the day she died. I just have a lot of gratitude for her willingness to share so openly with all of us her personal experiences, and I'm hoping that others are able to take something away from this conversation. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sam Sebastian, and today I'm joined by my guest and dear friend, Diane Taylor. Diane has been a part of my life for, I think, the past year, maybe a little more, a little less. I'm not quite sure the exact date or time, but yeah, just meeting you through our friend Brendan, who knows mutual friends and has connected us and enabled us to get to know each other more. It's just been really, really sweet. And what's really amazing is I noticed that there's more and more, like, we've been connected through other groups and organizations. We're both students of various psychotherapy methods and other healing modalities, and it's just so cool to see all the different threads and how we're all connected.
Yeah, and the convergence of some.
Yes. Yeah. And I really wanted to have you on today, just to have a conversation about how things have been for you during COVID and all the other experiences that have been happening simultaneously.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I'm excited and a teeny bit nervous to be here, but it's really good to be with you. And I really love the name of your podcast because it kind of has this knowing that we're all probably okay, but going a little bit deeper, there's definitely more going on. So, and I am a person who will, like, I think I'll always be okay. I'm always okay. I think I was forced into being really self-sufficient early on. But yeah, COVID and being sheltering in place, was a whole new experience.
Yeah. It's interesting just as people hear the podcast a little bit more and know the name of it, and I'll have, like, I'll send a message like, how are you doing? And they'll make a comment like, oh, you really want to know, huh? And yeah, it's, I think we're so programmed to just respond with just a quick response and then kind of flip it over to the other person to share. And
yeah, it also has a little, I'm so sorry, playfulness to it, like, but how are you really, which is brings out you, like the Sam that I know, like this playful and also person who really does want to know what's going on. So that's fun.
Yeah. And I'm curious, if there's anything that's kind of on your heart in this moment or has been, that you'd be willing to share.
Yeah. So, for me, I mean, as you know, right, I think, I can't remember exactly when San Francisco or the Bay Area went into shelter in place, but for me, it is marked on March 21st, which I think was a couple days after the city was kind of shutting down. My mom went into hospice, and she has had cancer and dementia, and she had been in a pretty significant car accident a week prior or 2 weeks prior. And so the decision was made to put her into hospice. And because of COVID, there were no beds. And so I just went up. She lives 5 hours away. And I just went up thinking, well, we'll figure something, like there will be a bed that opens. And there was a bed that they thought was going to open for her. And I actually went up to be with her, and was with her the whole time until she passed away 5 weeks later. And so I never dreamed that that would be the way it would end, given just the circumstances. And I think for me, COVID was definitely there. It was like the coronavirus, and we watched the news every day, and it was very much present in our life, but the focus was really taking care of someone who, like when she came home she was in the hospital for a week, and no one could see her at that point, which was kind of terrible, but I was like grateful for her dementia, that she didn't like sink in, that she wasn't cognizant that nobody was coming to see her except the nurses. And she didn't ever have to confront her mortality, because her dementia was, meanwhile, she was mostly up and around, walking around and visiting friends and doing whatever with her husband, but her dementia was pretty bad. But, she came home and she would sit up and she would eat and ask for her favorite coffee that we'd run and get. And 3 days later, we were feeding her either like with a spoon or through a straw, and changing her clothes and bathing her and changing diapers within 3 days. And I thought, wow, this is going fast. And I didn't want it to linger, but it went how it went. And so I remember thinking day after day, boy, I really wish I could just be home sheltering in place. I wish I could just be home having to do nothing. And I wish that I could just have that time, to myself. It was like really selfish. And I allow that that's how I felt. But I was there for the long haul for my mom. But, it was so funny. I'm like, all these lucky people, they just get to be home and do nothing. So, yeah, I mean, what complicated taking care of my mom was actually probably easier than her husband, who also has dementia and was way more like mobile and wanted to go out. He didn't understand the virus and didn't understand why he couldn't go to the bank every day and the post office every day. And, and he had just crashed his car. And so he was really going through, the painful process of not being as mobile as he used to be. I mean, they're both late 80s, so he shouldn't have been driving. He kept passing his driver test. So, anyway, the car accident took care of that. But anyway,
that's so much.
Yeah. I am extremely grateful for my time with my mom. Like, we had it was like, I think I protected myself around her. She was very volatile. She was very outgoing. She had tons of friends. But mostly she was defended, like always this defended person. And it was really hard to be around her for me. And even when I'd try to say, when she would get angry about something and I wasn't on her side, or I'd say, oh, that must hurt. It doesn't hurt. It would just have this harshness come back. And so, I called her every week and kept up on her life. And, I didn't have like a really connected, close relationship with her. And so when she came home, she wasn't defended at all. And I mean, she was just grateful and I love you and you're so beautiful. And it was very loving and very affectionate. It took cancer and dementia to get there, which is my dark humor coming out, but it was still very lovely. And she was very much, just grateful. And, I'd come and see her in the morning. She was in this bed in the living room and I'd come in and she's like, oh, when did you get here? It was like a new day every day, but she's like, so good to see you. And, it was, for me and our relationship, it was very healing. I can't explain it except that we got to be together in like what I'll say is like mother-daughter intimacy that I don't think I ever experienced prior to that.
It really touches me to hear that, to hear that you had that with her, especially just the remaining time that she was here with us in this dimension.
Yeah. She was so full of love and gratitude. She just kept thanking us. Like my brother was there for part of the time and, oh, thank you. And I love you. And she was funny. She was like very funny. So yeah, I would have never, like, if I had conjured up a way that my mom would leave this life and me to get a healing with her, that's not what I would have come up with, but that's what happened. And I'm so grateful. I just really treasure that time. We all have our wounds and we all have wounds from our primary caretaker. And so I have that. And then I'm able to separate that and just sort of separate the two.
As I hear you share, about your experience, and I can tell there's a lot of maybe wounds that happen throughout your life, and specifically pertaining to your relationship with your mom. And I don't know the full extent of what's happened, and what I do hear is there was a healing process that you didn't even imagine would be possible, and it sounds like it was a gift, and also potentially a challenge to really be with her in that state. And although from what you shared, it seemed like she just was, there was like an innocence and a playfulness that kind of came through, and a gratitude, and even with the dementia, I haven't been around many people who've had it, and I'm not sure that I've shared with you, but my mom is going through some stuff mentally right now, and with her mental health, and it kind of, from what we've been talking about, it kind of sounds like it's the early onset of dementia, and it's something that I don't even know that I can fully prepare for. and I know that I want to go see her as soon as I can, because I don't know like how quick or what shifts can happen. And I'm sure you maybe had that experience, and I'm curious what that was like, that moment where you noticed the shift of her being present with you, and then kind of not being as present.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first, I'm really sorry that's happening for your mom and you. It's dementia is so hard. It's just, so tricky. So with my mom, she's kind of always been this larger than life character. Like when my mom's in a room, you would know it. She's very loud and she kind of very, people think she says what she thinks. That's an expression. Oh, you always know where like what's on her mind, because she'll just say it, even if it's offensive, and she'll just think, too bad if you don't like it. That's how I am, kind of thing. So she always had this little bit of wackiness to her, so that when the dementia started coming in, it wasn't really obvious, because like if she was wrong about something, she would just keep fighting for being wrong and be more wacky about it. Like, one of the worst things was she donated her home to an organization, and we didn't find out about it until 5 years after she did. And it scared me because she had no other assets. And I just worried that we would need her home as an asset to provide for her. And I went up and talked to her. I said, Mom, you don't, like, what are we going to do if you can't be at home? And she's like, too bad. We'll just, and she just would, keep standing for what she had decided 5 years, instead of actually reconsidering and having it going and reversing that situation. But I think I don't. She did fall. Eventually, she fell. It was 2 years ago, and she hit her head, and so she ended up in the hospital. And I think at that point, she had a brain bleed, and they didn't say there was anything long lasting, but we think from that point on, she had a major decline. Mm-hmm. So, but we wanted to put her into adult daycare, and we took her for a tour of this place, and she was like, I'm not old enough for this. And here she's an 88-year-old woman who walks with a cane or a walker, and would keep falling in her home, and call the paramedics to help pick her up because her husband couldn't. And she said, no, I'm not old. I'm not old enough for this, like, senior care place. And then we said, well, what about volunteering here? And she's like, well, that I'll do, So I don't know if that answers your question, but look, her wackiness may disguise it for a very long time. But some things just, it became clear.
Yeah. No, I think about just our relationships with our parents as we get older. The dynamics shift, and it's no longer that and I'll speak for myself, that kind of, she's the mom and I'm the son, and I have to please and just make sure. I think to an extent, yes, that still exists in the relationship with my mom, and I've found a way in which I get to share my perspective, and it be something we can actually we talk about with each other. And I I feel like there's this point where we become like we become the ones that take care of our parents, and I think it's a really beautiful process that can happen, and maybe it happened a lot more in the past, and things, because people live so far away from their family members nowadays, and there are so many in care living facilities for the elderly. That process kind of doesn't happen as much, and I think about being with my grandma when I was maybe, I think, 10 or 11, and she was coming into her last days on this earth with us. And my aunt, she lived there with her for years, and took care of her, and we once we moved a little closer to where she lived in the Central Valley, we'd have her up for a weekend, and it was almost like she became a child again, and there was just this sweetness and playfulness, and I appreciate uh, I really appreciated getting to have that experience with her, because it just left such a deep like loving and fondness for those times that we had together. And
that's beautiful.
Even if it was challenging in the past, and it's not to say like those challenging times, or those times in which there were wounds that happen, just go away. It's yeah, I'm wondering how, and it might still be a process that you're going through. I mean, it's fairly recent, but how that kind of feels with the unresolved things that were there, and moving into the grieving process of losing her, and how that is for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to answer that, but I also want to go back to your point about how we live often now far away from our families. And I did see through those 5 weeks that I was with my mom, how if I had lived in the same city and we had our lives were more intertwined, I would have noticed things more. She maybe wouldn't have given her home away. There would have been a more, sort of a stronger relationship, and that there would be this natural way that I would start caring for her versus a very abrupt way. Because sometimes I'm like, how did we let this go on for so long? These two people living together who really both needed help. I mean, they're both very strong-willed, and I don't know that it would have gone down well either way. But I do see that because we separate from our families, it does change things for the dynamics, or like for the caretaking toward the end, at least for me. I mean, I think many families aren't like that, but for my family, it was that way. But, so it's really interesting. I went through this sort of, thing. Like, I was, at the time, there was so much free time. I was going through all my mom's things and looking at her china that actually I don't think ever got used, and thinking, this is so, like, there's such a, like, in the end, these things, the china and the silverware and the this and the that, nothing matters. It's all just gets put in a box, and it's, someone's taking it or it's donated. And she had hundreds of scarves and lots of jewelry. But I was sitting there thinking, like, this, like, what matters is our relationship. And that's what I'm holding on to. And I feel because it was such a healing process, I feel very, very much, like, how do I say this? Like, I have my wounds, and some of them were from a mom who was overwhelmed with her 5 children that she had within 5 years. And I was born, my sister wasn't even a year old when I came along. And so I have a lot more, I guess I'll say I have a lot more compassion for what she was going through. And, so I'm able just to separate that and just say, these are my wounds and what I struggle with, or my adaptive behaviors, or my repetitive patterns that I get, that come up for me when I'm challenged or triggered. And so I don't have this like anger toward her any longer. It's sort of dissipated. I have a lot more room for what she was going through and her wounding. I think I have a lot more compassion for her than I ever did. And I get my challenges, and I give myself way more room for my own wounds too, I notice. So, yeah, so that did free up some really stuff I was holding on to, some beliefs and maybe even anger toward my mom.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of transmuted into this like place in yourself where you're able to see a little more where she was coming from and what she might have been going through, and know that she's human too.
Right. Yeah. And I realize I recognize that I did want some relationship with her that I didn't have. And I don't know that I ever would have had it, given all the tools that I have. And I can just see, like, the sadness for me was that I never had that connected and just safe space with her that I needed. And on the flip side, it's made, I am who I am. Like, it's made me who I am today, which, like, I'm doing okay, so, so there's a gift in that. I'm not explaining it very well, I think, but there's a gift in all of it that I do see.
Yeah. And I think about just how I received a card from you while you were up there, and just hearing about your experience and taking care of your mom, and then also your I don't know if you refer to him as your stepdad or
my mom's husband.
Your mom's husband.
Yeah.
And there's just the capacity you had to hold that. I don't know all of what that experience was like, but you were able to be in that, and like it just like I don't know many people that would be able to just like turn on some kind of like superhuman part of themselves to do that. And that's how I see it, and I just really admire that in you, and just your thoughtfulness and the way that you articulate yourself and in the letters that you write, and I love getting your cards.
Thank you. I love getting yours.
I wonder, was there any cards that you wrote to your mom that really that really stand out to you, or
So this wasn't exactly a card, but I did. Oh wow! I God, I never in a million years thought this would come up today. But so when I was in college, I decided to write a journal of my interactions with my parents. My dad was alive at this point, but it ended up being the last year of his life. And I wrote about like hearing from phone calls when we saw each other, and what I felt about them, and what they meant to me, and what each like specifically, like I just got off the phone with you, and that kind of thing. And in that September of that year, I started on January 1st. In September of that year, my dad passed away. I was living in Santa Barbara at the time. He had a heart attack, and we were told to come home. And so I have 4 siblings, and one of them wasn't able to come home, but 3 were home, and I was the last one. And I flew to San Francisco, and then there was fog, so I had to rent a car, and like I was just so anxious to get up there. Anyway, I got there, got to see him, tell him I love him, and then he passed away of a heart attack. But so the journal from that point on talked about my experience with my mom and her navigating burying her husband. And I gave it to her at the end of the year, or at Christmas time. And, as you can imagine, getting a gift like that, it's a little bit like takes you out of the whole, opening gifts experience. And she read it, and just all of it right there, and she was crying through it, and didn't say anything to me. I think for a day or two. My sister-in-law picked it up to read it, and she got really angry and took it and said, "This is not yours," and so it caused a little something there. But I actually don't have a memory of us talking about it ever again. But I have that journal with me on my shelf, and it's really hard for me to read. It's just so vulnerable and a little bit just brutal on the heart, But on the flip side, I sent my mom cards for the birthdays and Mother's Day and when she was sick, but I don't know that I got vulnerable with her very often and after that time for much at all.
Yeah, I mean, sharing something so vulnerable and not even having some kind of acknowledgement or conversation about it is just like I notice in myself, like almost like, I want to protect and guard,
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of us just don't have tools to express ourselves, and she was one of those people. I mean, she had the outward, full expression, Betty's in the house kind of thing. And she had tons of friends. But the vulnerable expressions and the really tenderness that we all have, some of us wear on our sleeve and some of us deep inside of us. I don't think she had access to that. So.
Well, I think there's something about some of the past generations and how they express and share vulnerability and their emotions. To this day, when I talk to my mom on the phone and she gets so overwhelmed with the emotions that she's having, it's like there's been times where she'll just hang up the phone. She starts to cry, and it's like she can't be in that and allow me to be in that with her. And I think about that and just modeling vulnerability and maybe they won't ever be able to express in that way fully. And I feel very fortunate for having therapy and learning various therapeutic modalities and learning the language of being able to express my emotions. And
you're really good at it. It's really one of your gifts. Like, it's a huge gift to other people to be around you and be witnessed by you, and also the acceptance that you bring to your being, your presence with others is so amazing. I'm sure she feels that.
I think about how she's expressed that she feels safe and can open up to me in ways that she hasn't been able to open up maybe to my sister, or when my brother was here, or even my dad. And I've wanted to find someone in her life, whether it's a therapist or a counselor or somebody, where she could really just have that space to open up. And it's like, it feels like it's a little foreign for her, and she's just kind of apprehensive and kind of pushes that away. And I want to help. And I know there's only so much that I can do, especially from being where I'm at now and living about 4 hours away from her. But I do know that my sister is trying to relocate both my parents to Las Vegas, hopefully within the year. And they'll be much closer to her and my niece and nephew. And I think that could be really helpful, as you were speaking to, just if you were a little bit closer, like you maybe would have been able to just recognize some of these shifts that were happening within her, and just helped along the way. And it's like, I don't feel like I'm in a position to bring them up here and create that. And I think my sister is in a little bit of a better situation.
That's awesome.
But I want to be part of their lives in that way.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome that your sister might be able to bring them to Las Vegas, because just have your mom to have the grandkids around, it sounds like, and just have more interaction, family interaction there. And I feel like you probably aren't giving yourself enough credit for how much you are impacting your mom's life. Like, just being able to be that space, she says, that she feels comfortable to open up to. So, but distance is hard. It makes it hard.
It does. I'm curious of how things are with your siblings in this moment. Do you feel like y'all are a little bit closer, or still just kind of going through your own processes? Or?
So we're all we live all, like, two of my brothers live in Idaho, and far, like, hours away from each other. One brother does live in Las Vegas, and my sister lives out in Colorado, and I'm here in the Bay Area, California Bay Area. And we, like, 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, we all connected and went home to my mom's for Thanksgiving, which we never made a point of getting together on holidays with each other. My sister used to live close, and she was kind of I'm single, never had children, so she's with my family and her kids. And so we all connected we have a text string that we've kept alive the entire time, and we still are today. We share about whatever's going on in our lives. And for a lot of that time, it would be about our interactions with my mom, or I would visit a lot because I'm the closest. And I think you know this, but for the people listening, I'll explain that, like, we all thought last Thanksgiving was our goodbyes. Most of my siblings thought that was the time they were saying goodbye to my mom, knowing that she did have this cancer and that it wasn't being treated. But in the end, we all were there at her bedside when she took her last breaths. And we knew it was toward the end. We were all just in the house or outside in the sunshine, and we were adjusting her and did a change, and her eyes flew open. And at this point, her breaths were like so far apart, like 45 seconds or a minute apart sometimes, or just so hard. Like I just could not leave her side because I just knew it was just, it was just getting close. And then, so it always took three of us to change her because she would get really agitated being turned on her side. So someone would just be at her head and say, "It's okay, Mom, we got you. You're not going to fall." And somebody else would hold her and somebody else would change the diaper. But anyway, we repositioned her and her eyes flew open. At this point, her eyes were pretty much closed all the time. And, we all just said, "Hey guys, something's going on with Mom." And so the five of us, and then I had two sisters-in-law there and her husband were all surrounding her and just really loving her up. And, "We're here for you, Mom. We love you. I have a religious brother, like, go to God, Mom." And so within minutes, we knew she had passed, and we were just all in tears. And my brothers were like, "Oh my God, I have the best family. I love you guys so much. I'm so glad I'm here." We were just all hugging each other and just loving each other up. And so grateful that everybody made the decision to come home that last week. We stayed in touch a lot afterwards, like everybody left at different times and one by one. And then finally my sister and I stayed a week to like make sure my stepdad, was taken care of, and we had a plan for him. And then I got home, and then my sister was like the last one. And so we were all just making sure everyone got home safely. And now it's slowed a little bit. But we all just have a huge amount of love for each other and thankfulness. And for me, since I was carrying the bulk of the load, they're so grateful to me. Like, it was just, I actually felt so supported by all of my siblings the entire time. And they just kept saying, "Thank God for Diane. Thank God for Diane. Thank you so much." And I get shy about it. I just felt like I'm just doing what needs to be done. I'm taking care of Mom, and, the one thing that did happen, so, we haven't talked explicitly about, like, I know you lost Jesus earlier this year, and how grief is such a private and internal thing. At least for me, it has been. But, somebody gave me a book called Healing After Loss, and it's a little pocket book, and it has, for every day of the year, it has like a little passage and then a reflection, and it's kind of like a meditation. And my brother's birthday was last month, and I just snapped the passage for that day and made a photo of it and sent it out in text. And it was a beautiful passage about making sure to not connect the grief with your loved one forever. Like, the grief can go away, and you can the love for your loved one who's passed can stay on. And just make a reminder to do that, like, separate them, but be in your grief as much as you need to. And then stay with the love that you had for that person and what they brought to your life. And it just felt like the right thing that all of us needed to hear. But it was perfect that it ended up being on his birthday. So
it sounds very synchronistic and
yeah. it's been like that. I have one other, if we have time, I have one other, like a little bit more, like, I was just really upset one day. I was back home. I was just like crying, and I was thinking about my mom, and I'm like, I don't remember what she looked like at the end. Like, was I not present? Was it too painful? Did I just have this memory just go away? Because, like, why don't I remember? Because I was there. I know I was there. And I just had a good cry. And then I turned to that book, and it said, you may have times where you start to forget what they look like or what they sound like. And I just was like, wow, like things like that. I love when things like that happen, and synchronicity is like the perfect word. And, it's like, wow, I like, this is happening. But, and it just reflected like, it's okay that this happens, and you will have memories that come back, but, it just was very, it was a perfect thing for that exact day. So.
I just wanna, I hope you're able to just see how amazing you are, and the amount of love that you have for your family and for your mom, and just that I could hear the appreciation they have for you, and for all that you did for your mom, as she was in her final days. And with grief, it's really interesting. It's hard for me sometimes just to be held in it by others.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the experience of just having a conversation with another friend about grief, and they were like, if you're open to it, can I just like hold you in that for a moment, and I wanna hold you in whatever space you're in right now, and in your process around grief, and just really touched and grateful for you being willing to have this conversation today and share so vulnerably. And I hope that people listening, if they have gone through something similar or come up against something similar in their life, I'm sure will have something to gain from this conversation, and navigating that process for themselves.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for saying that. I'm just going to take it in. Thank you. Yeah. There part of me wants to actually like say something profound or, very, profound, but I just want to take that in. It's part of loving is being able to receive it when it comes in, and not just push it back out or deflect it. And that's a place for me to learn and stretch. So thank you. It feels really good. And I feel really, I'm just grateful to my siblings and for what you just said, just like, because I do just like, I think we all, maybe I'll just speak for myself, have a tendency to dismiss the love when it's coming in, and the gratitude, and
maybe a little bit of a nourishment barrier.
Yeah. So take down my tough guy armor and let it in. It feels good. So thank you.
Is there anything else that you want to leave the listeners with today, or or just say for yourself? No, nothing in particular.
Yeah, what this really brings to mind is that it's not like the grief isn't over, and I do know that there's more for me to do. I'm back to my everyday life, and I'm giving myself tons of room to feel what I feel, and Yeah. So just be really compassionate with ourselves about those feelings, especially the hard feelings. So, and what you just said, and how you are with me, it's always a reminder to just, have that self-compassion for myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Thank
I love you.
Sam. I love you too so much.
Thank you all so much for listening today. If any of you'd like to find out more about the work that I do, you can go to samsebastian.com. That's samsebastian.com. And if you're interested in being a guest on the show, please reach out to me via email. That's sam@samsebastian.com. Much love.